Hey y'all, so today we are going to do the Ride or Die book tag, which is another book tag that I saw Break Even Books do, so I'll link his channel down below. He's been doing a lot of tags lately that I really enjoy. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and get into the Ride or Die book tag. First prompt is The BFF, a book that not everyone likes, but has been with you since the beginning and you will always love them. And for me, that is Watershed Down. This is easily in my top 5 favorite books. I reread it all the time. I read this book when I was in 5th grade, and they had the mass market paperback version, so it was close to 600 pages, and no one in 5th grade, even middle school, wanted to read a 600-page book, especially one about rabbits. But I did. I read it. I absolutely love this book. And even to this day, like, a lot of people just think it's boring and everything, but I love it. Absolutely love it. Watershed Down by Richard Adams, one of my top favorite reads. Prompt number 2 is The Long Drive, which is a book that you would take with you on a long journey or where you're going to be sitting and waiting for a long period of time. So that for me is The Hobbit. It has a story to go with it. As you can tell, it's very beat up. The spine is pretty worn out. A lot of you know that I haven't read The Lord of the Rings. This is the only book by J.R.R. Tolkien that I've read, and I absolutely love it, but I can't get through Lord of the Rings. That's a discussion for another time. The story about The Hobbit is my grandfather, who I was very, very close with. He always had what he called his travel book. And it was a book that his mother gave him by Louis L'Amour, Over the Far Blue Mountains or something like that. And he always took it with him every time he traveled out of town overnight or for several nights. As long as it was an overnight trip, he always took that book with him. He would also bring a new book to read as well, but he always had that book, and even if he didn't plan on reading it while he was traveling. And it was something that, you know, the book traveled to all these places with him, and he felt like it gave his book character and meaning and depth. You know, it was beat up just like mine is because, you know, he would put it in his duffel bag or a suitcase and just brought it with him everywhere he went. And when I started getting into reading in elementary school, he told me that I needed a travel book, and I had already started you know, showing interest in fantasy books, and so he bought me this, The Hobbit. This is the same book. This is the same book that he bought me all those years ago. And it's my travel book. So I'm getting emotional. I'm sorry. So anytime I go out of town, I put it in my suitcase, my duffel bag, whatever I'm taking, and it comes with me. I've read this one several times because sometimes I'll just forget to bring an actual book, and so I'll end up just picking up somewhere, you know, in this book and just reading. But so now it's been to several states with me, and my daughter, a few years ago, I bought her first travel book, which now she brings along with her to every you know, out of town trip that she goes on, and that was The Legend of Drizzt, the first book in that trilogy, and she loves Drizzt. We both love Dungeons and Dragons, so that was a pretty easy choice for her as for me to give her as well. So now we've got several generations going for travel books, and you know, maybe she'll do the same for her kid one day, but so yeah, that's The Hobbit, and that's why it's near and dear to my heart. And so this is the only book you'll ever see that I own like this. All of my books are always in such pristine condition, but this, I love it because it's not in pristine condition. What's really cool is my husband, for one of our anniversaries, he actually bought me a leather-bound edition of The Hobbit, and I carry it in my purse, so I carry it everywhere I go. And then I carry this for all of my out-of-town trips. We need to move on before I start crying. I'm sorry. Prompt 3 is The Newcomer, which is a new book or series that you can't stop talking about. And so I'm sure most of you aren't surprised, but my answer is Mistborn Era 1. Such a new experience for me. I absolutely love Sanderson's writing, and I just can't stop talking about it. I keep telling my husband to read it. Both my husband and my daughter have started reading The Final Empire, and I just keep asking them, how far into it are you? Are you there yet? So I just love this series, and it's got so many things to talk about that I'm just in love with it right now. So I'll eventually get over it, I promise. Prompt 4 is The Quiet One, a book that you reach for when you want peace and quiet. That was an interesting question because I never reach for one specific book when I want peace and quiet. I always just reach for whatever book I'm reading when I want peace and quiet. If I had to choose a book that has that particular feeling of, peace and quiet, just from reading the book, I'd probably have to say it would either be Watershed Down again, either Watershed Down or The 13th Tale. I talk about The 13th Tale all the time, but the prose is just very beautiful and somber almost, so that kind of gives me that really quiet feeling as well. Prompt 5 is The Outgoing One, a book you'd read out in public or in antisocial situations. And I don't have an answer because that's every book. Every book I read is for that purpose. I will bring it out in public so I can just read it. I don't care what book it is. I don't pick a specific book for that purpose. Prompt 6 is The Guilty Pleasure, a book that you're slightly embarrassed about or don't want to justify. I don't really have many of these. I don't think. The only thing I would probably say could be considered a book that I might be embarrassed about is if it's a YA book. And everybody that knows me, I don't read YA. I'm not one of those people that bashes YA because there are so many books that I've read, even at my age, where I'm outside of that YA demographic that I still enjoyed. Some of them have really great stories. I think the most recent one I read was We Are the Ants. Absolutely loved that book. It was very good. So I don't bash YA, and I don't look down on people for reading YA. But the reason why I say that is because everyone knows that I typically don't read YA at all. But if it's a good book, it's a good book. It doesn't matter if it's YA or not. So I'll still read it if it sounds interesting enough, and that's just how I am. Prompt 7 is The Stranger, a book that no one has really heard of, but you wish they did. And I guess I don't know how many times can I answer The 13th Tale in one tag. So let's just go with Nobody Is Ever Missing by Catherine Lacey. I really enjoyed this book. I probably related to the character a little bit more than I thought I would, which was pretty surprising. I wish more people knew about it because I really enjoyed it when I read it, and it's very short, a contemporary novel. It's very good. So I'll say this book, that way I don't answer The 13th Tale again. We'll cheat a little bit. Prompt 8. The book was better. The book was great. The movie was terrible. There's so many. We could go on and for days, I'm sure, but off the top of my head, like Harry Potter, Aragon, Watershed Down. Watershed Down wasn't that great. What disappointed me with Watershed Down is it was an animated series, and they didn't just go with the book. Like they changed genders for one of the rabbits, which I thought was weird. And the only reason why it bothered me about changing genders is because later in the book, genders really plays a role because they have to worry about breeding and making their, warren viable. And they only had so many does. So it was kind of weird for me that they changed one of the rabbits' genders for that purpose, because it did play a role into the book later on. And then they brought in like magic into the book, which the book didn't have. I never finished that series. I didn't. It was an animated show on Netflix. It was too different from the book. Like this book is not magical at all. But yet they brought in, anyway, I can't start ranting about the Watershed Down show. I was just so excited for it, and then they gave me that garbage. Number 9, The Author, an author that you will instantly buy any book that they put out. And this was kind of interesting because I've never really been like that, I guess, until like this recent spree of fantasy books where I'm now on a Brandon Sanderson kick. That I guess, I'll go with Gillian Flynn. because she wrote Gone Girl, Sharp Objects, and Dark Places, and I absolutely love those three, because generally before I got into my recent fantasy kick, I read a lot of contemporary and thrillers, and I loved all three of her books. So if she came out with another book, I would automatically buy it, and that's easy for me to say. So yeah, I guess I'll go with Gillian Flynn or Brandon Sanderson. So that is the end of the Ride or Die book tag. If you haven't done this book tag, feel free to do it. There's so many of us in Knickknacks Community Corner that I'm sure haven't done it. Any of y'all are free to do this tag. It's very interesting. I would love to hear y'all's answers. Let me know some of your answers down in the comments below. I'd love to see if you've heard of any of these books or if you enjoy them as well. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Y'all take care. Bye.